I thought I was going to live a quiet, peaceful life here in the city, moving from one job to another, until the night I agreed to take care of a blind heir from the Parker family, one of the wealthiest conglomerate in the city. My name is Alex, 24 years old and a waiter at a local restaurant in town. Every morning, I woke up before the sun in a one-room apartment that could barely compare with a kitchen. The ceiling fan squeaked like it was begging for mercy, and the mattress, if you could call it that, remembered every disappointment I'd ever had. I washed my face with cold water, pulled on the same faded black jeans, and headed to the restaurant before the city had fully decided to be awake. The restaurant wasn't fancy. It wasn't even trying to be. Low tables, cracked tiles, plastic chairs that wobbled if you breathed wrong. We served cheap meals to people who wanted to be full, not impressed. I was a waiter, sometimes a cleaner, sometimes a delivery runner when someone called in. My salary barely stretched to rent, transport, and food. Saving money felt like a joke someone forgot to explain. But I endured it. Because endurance was something I was good at. I had grown up poor. My father left when I was young. My mother worked herself into exhaustion and still smiled like everything was fine. I learned not to ask for more than what was needed. So I worked harder to help lift the burden. That was my life. Predictable, safe in its own suffocating way. Until that night. It was late. The dinner rush had thinned into a trickle of tired customers and half-empty plates. My shirt clung to my back with sweat as I wiped down a table for the third time, more out of habit than necessity. I was thinking about whether I could afford eggs the next morning when I felt that strange sensation of being watched. I looked up, annoyed, ready to ask what the customer wanted, and froze. He was standing near the counter, dressed too well for the place. Not flashy, just clean. Expensive in a quiet way. Our eyes met, and his expression shifted slowly, like he was pulling a memory from somewhere deep. Then his mouth curved into a smile. Alex. No one said my name like that anymore. It took me a second to place him. Then it hit me all at once. Joshua? He laughed, genuinely surprised, and just like that, the years between us folded in half. Joshua, my childhood friend. The one whose family moved to the city when we were teenagers. The one who promised we'd stay in touch and then disappeared into a life I couldn't follow. I remembered him as restless, always dreaming of more. Now he looked like he has life figured out already. We didn't talk much at first. Just exchanged looks, small smiles, disbelief. The restaurant suddenly felt smaller, cheaper, like it was embarrassed to be seen with us together. Joshua ordered food he barely touched. He watched me work and I became uncomfortably aware of how worn my life must look from the outside. After a while he said he worked for the Parker Group. The name landed heavier than it should have. Everyone knew the Parkers. Even people like me. They owned one of the biggest car production companies in the country. Generational wealth, private drivers, mansions that looked like museums. The kind of family newspapers loved to whisper about. Joshua said it casually like it was nothing. I tried to laugh it off, made a joke about him being important now. He smiled, but his eyes stayed thoughtful. When my shift finally ended, he asked if I had a few minutes. We stood outside the restaurant under a flickering streetlight. The night air was thick, the city buzzing around us. Joshua didn't waste time. He told me his boss, Wilfred Parker, was looking for someone. Not just anyone. Someone to take care of his blind son. My eyes widened. Me? Taking care of a rich man's blind heir? It sounded like the beginning of a bad joke or a scam that ended with me missing a kidney. But Joshua was serious. The job, he said, was mostly companionship. Making sure William Parker was comfortable. Helping him move around the house. Keeping him company. The pay made my stomach drop. It was way more than I expected. I asked why they didn't hire a professional. Joshua said the family wanted someone simple. Joshua told me he worked under Ben Parker now. The stepbrother of William who thinks the company should be his. The tension in that house, he said, could cut skin. I asked why he was telling me all this. I went home that night and stared at my ceiling. I thought about my mother's tired hands. About overdue bills. About how tired I was of surviving instead of living. By morning, my answer was already waiting for me. The Parker mansion didn't look real. That was my first thought as the gates slid open and I stepped inside, my worn shoes meeting the clean floor of the estate. Joshua barely had time to say my name to the security before he quickly drove off. They looked me over once, quick, dismissive, and then nodded. I was ushered in before I could fully process where I was. The gates closed behind me with a heavy finality that made my chest tighten. So this was it. This was the place my life was about to change. Inside, the air felt different. Cool and clean. Like it had never known desperation. My footsteps sounded too loud against the floor, each step echoing my presence in a space that clearly wasn't made for people like me. I kept my shoulders tight, my hands still, afraid that touching the wrong thing would cost more than I could ever repay. One of the security men gestured for me to follow him down a wide corridor. "Mr. Williams' room is." He didn't finish. We heard someone coming from behind. Her heels announced her before her voice did, sharp, deliberate clicks against the floor, cutting through the quiet like a warning. "Excuse me." The temperature in the hallway seemed to drop. I looked up just as she stepped into view. Mrs. Grace Parker. I didn't know her name then, but I knew power when I saw it. She was dressed impeccably, posture flawless, expression cool and offended by my mere existence. Her eyes swept over me from head to toe, not lingering anywhere, as if I wasn't worth the effort. "And who gave you permission to go into William's room without informing me?" she asked harshly. The security man stiffened instantly. "I'm sorry, ma'am." "Sorry?" she repeated, her voice thin with disdain. "Is that how this house runs now? People wandering into my mansion without my approval?" The man apologized again, stepping back immediately, creating distance between me and the hallway ahead. I stood frozen, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure she could hear it. Her gaze shifted to me. Sharp, assessing and cruel. "And you," she said. "Who are you?" My throat went dry. "I'm Alex, ma'am," I said shakenly. "Alex," she repeated, tasting the name like something unpleasant. "And what exactly is a peasant like you doing in my mansion?" The word hit harder than I expected. "Peasant." I bowed my head immediately. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I was offered a job. I didn't mean to offend anyone." She scoffed. "Really?" I swallowed hard, my fingers curling into my palms. I apologized again because that was what I knew how to do. Because survival had taught me that silence and apology were shields, even when you'd done nothing wrong. She stepped closer, her perfume sharp and expensive. "People like you should know your place. You don't belong here." For a moment, I thought she was going to order them to throw me out. I felt it in my bones, that sudden, familiar fear of being discarded. Sent back out into the world with nothing but humiliation to show. Then another voice cut in, smooth and amused. "Mother." A man stepped out from one of the adjoining corridors. He looked dangerous in a polished way. Ben Parker didn't need to introduce himself. Everything about him screamed entitlement. His perfectly tailored suit, the relaxed confidence in his walk, the smile that curved his lips like he already knew how this would end. His eyes flicked over me, lingering just a second too long, sharp and calculating. "It was Father who asked me to bring in a caretaker for William," he said easily. Mrs. Grace's jaw tightened. She hissed under her breath, clearly displeased, then straightened. "Your father didn't mention this to me." "He doesn't always," Ben replied, that smile still in place. She shot me one last look, pure contempt, then turned and walked away, her heels striking the floor with controlled fury. Just like that, she was gone. The hallway felt quieter without her, but no less oppressive. Ben turned his attention fully to me now. "Well," he said lightly, "welcome." I kept my head down, eyes fixed on the floor. I didn't trust myself to meet his gaze. He circled me slowly, like he was inspecting something newly acquired. "You're cute," he mused. I stiffened. "Too bad you're from a poor home," he continued, voice almost playful. "With better background, you might have made better use of those looks." My face burned, but I said nothing. Silence had become second nature to me. He chuckled softly. "You can go see the blind Bartimaeus now." The way he said it, mocking, careless, made my stomach twist. With a casual flick of his hand, he dismissed me. The security guard returned, motioning for me to follow. I did, my legs heavy, my thoughts louder than my footsteps. We walked past door after door, each one grander than the last. Rooms that looked untouched. The deeper we went, the quieter the mansion became, as if sound itself knew not to linger here. Then we stopped. This door was different. It wasn't larger or more decorated, but something about it felt heavier. The guard reached for the handle, and my heart began to race. The room felt different the moment I stepped inside. It wasn't just quieter, it was heavier, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. The door closed softly behind me, and for a second I just stood there, unsure of where to move, afraid that even breathing too loudly might disturb something fragile. Then I saw him. William Parker was seated near the window, sunlight brushing against his face like it knew him personally. He was striking. Not in an aggressive way like Ben, not in the cold, polished way of the rest of the house, but in a calm, devastating way. His features were sharp yet gentle, as if they had been carved with patience. His posture was relaxed, but there was a quiet tension beneath it. And his eyes, they didn't meet mine. They stared past me, unfocused, distant. Sadness landed in my chest with a dull ache. It felt unfair, almost cruel, that someone who looked like this, strikingly handsome, someone who carried himself with such quiet dignity, was trapped in darkness. I found myself slowing my steps instinctively, softening my presence, as though the world hadn't already been hard enough on him. I cleared my throat. "Mr. Parker. I'm Alex. I'll be your caretaker." He turned his head toward the sound of my voice with smooth precision. Too smooth. But I ignored the thought as it brushed my mind. His lips curved slightly, not a smile exactly, but something polite. "So you're the one they sent," he said. His voice was calm, low, and steady. That surprised me more than I wanted to admit. "Yes, sir," I replied quickly. "I'll help with anything you need." There was a pause. A long one. "I don't need much," he said. "And I don't like pity." The words caught me off guard. He tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "Don't look at me like that," he said softly. "If I sense pity from you again, I'll fire you immediately." My heart skipped. "I'm sorry, sir," I blurted out. "I didn't mean to." "I know," he interrupted. Something about the way he said it made me straighten instinctively. This wasn't a man who wanted to be handled delicately. This was a man who refused to be diminished, even by kindness. I nodded. Understood. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, but it wasn't empty either. It felt deliberate. I helped him move around the room, guiding him carefully. He listened attentively, remembering everything I said. When I handed him a glass of water, his fingers brushed mine briefly, accidentally, and I pulled back faster than necessary. He didn't comment, but I felt his attention shift. Not long after, a knock came at the door. A staff member peeked in. "Mr. William, Mrs. Grace says dinner is ready." William's jaw tightened slightly. "I'm not hungry." The staff member hesitated, nodded, and left. Minutes passed. Then footsteps returned, firmer this time. Mrs. Grace walked in without waiting to be invited, her presence instantly filling the room. Her eyes flicked to me briefly before settling on William. "Your father would want you to attend the brief meeting tonight," she said coolly. "It's important." William didn't turn toward her. "Tell him I'm resting." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You can rest after dinner." "I'm not going," he said, voice steady. The air sharpened. "You can't keep isolating yourself," she snapped. "You are still part of this family." William let out a quiet scoff. "That's debatable." Her face darkened. For a moment I thought she might say more, something cruel, something sharp, but instead she turned and walked out, heels clicking angrily against the floor. The door closed. Silence returned. I hesitated, then spoke softly. "It seems you don't get along with your stepmother." William's laugh was short and humorless. "I never liked her." There was something raw in his tone now, something unguarded. "She moved in 6 months after my mother died in a tragic car accident." He continued, his fingers tightened slightly on the armrest. 5 months later, she had Ben. My breath caught. That means, my father had already been seeing her before my mother died. I didn't know what to say, so I said the only honest thing. I'm sorry. He didn't respond right away. When he did, his voice was quieter. Don't be. I stopped being surprised by betrayal a long time ago. Something twisted painfully in my chest. In that moment, he didn't feel like a powerful heir or a man born into privilege. He felt like someone who had been forced to grow up too fast, surrounded by people who smiled while cutting him open. I realized then that my pity had been misplaced. William Parker didn't need it. But somehow, despite his warning, I was already starting to care. A silence settled between us, thick and heavy. Somewhere in the distance, a fountain trickled. You don't have to do this, you know, William said suddenly. Do what? Pretend you care. He turned his face toward me. I know why you're here. 'Cause of the money. I stiffened. It's a job, sir. Sure. He shrugged. But if you're waiting for some tragic backstory to make me sympathetic, don't bother. I'm just blind. I studied him, the way he held himself, the careful precision of his movements. Like every gesture was calculated. William smirked. Let me guess. You thought I'd be some helpless rich boy crying into his silk sheets? I dare not say anything at that moment. He stood abruptly, holding a walking stick. Come on. I'll show you the house. I followed him through the mansion, watching as he navigated the paths with eerie confidence. William's steps didn't falter despite walking down the long stairs, and that surprised me. I've lived here my whole life. I know every inch of this place. I nodded, impressed. We reached a set of French doors and William pushed them open without hesitation, stepping into a hallway lined with portraits. The air inside was cool, smelling of lemon polish and old money. Servants' quarters are on the 3rd floor, he said, gesturing vaguely upward. You'll have your own room. Kitchen's free to use, but don't touch the wine cellar. Grace counts the bottles. You know the layout that well? William paused, his hand resting on the banister. I wasn't always blind. The words hit me like a punch. The 2nd floor was quieter, the hallway lined with closed doors. William stopped in front of one near the end. This is mine. He pushed it open. The room was huge, king-sized bed, sitting area, floor-to-ceiling windows covered with thick drapes. But what caught my attention were the books. Hundreds of them lining shelves, stacked on desks, spilling over onto the floor. I whistled low. You read all these? William's mouth quirked. Some. Most are just for show. My father likes visitors to think I'm scholarly. I almost laughed, but that wasn't necessary. My favorite place in the house, he said as he moved to a shelf, tracing the titles with his fingertips. No one comes down here anymore. Too dusty, apparently. Convincing William to attend that meeting wasn't part of my job description, but somehow it felt necessary. I stood beside him in his room, the heavy curtains half drawn, evening light spilling softly across his face. He sat on the edge of the bed, posture relaxed, fingers tapping lightly against the cane resting beside him. For someone who claimed he didn't care about the company, he listened too closely whenever Ben's name came up. Running away from your responsibilities doesn't make you irrelevant, I said carefully, but staying invisible does. He tilted his head slightly, like he was listening beyond my words. If you don't show up, I continued, my voice steadier than my chest felt, they'll slowly start acting like you don't exist. And Ben will gladly take what already belongs to you. Silence followed, thick and heavy. Then William exhaled a short laugh. You talk like someone who's had so much life experiences than me. I didn't answer, but stood some inch away from him waiting for his final conclusion. A few seconds later he straightened. Fine. I'm in. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until it rushed out of me. What happened next felt unreal. He placed calls and within a few minutes, the best hairstylist in the city arrived like he'd been summoned by royalty. Boxes of suits followed, dark, tailored, expensive enough to make my hands sweat just looking at them. I need a final judge, William said casually. You. My eyes widened. I was already getting nervous. The first outfit was elegant, the second commanding. The third. I swallowed. That one, I said quickly, afraid my voice would betray me if I hesitated. William smiled. Good choice. When he stepped out of the changing room, I actually gasped. I couldn't help it. His hair was styled neatly, framing his face perfectly, accentuating sharp cheekbones and that calm, dangerous confidence he always carried. The suit fit him perfectly. He didn't look like a blind heir. He looked like a king. My heart began to race, loud enough that I was sure he could hear it. "Alex?" he asked. "You're quiet." "You look incredible," I admitted. Something flickered across his face, satisfaction maybe. "Then you're coming with me," he said. "And you can't look like you crawled out of a dungeon." Before I could protest, I was dragged into another room. Staff surrounded me, measuring, adjusting, fixing things I didn't even know were wrong. When they were done and I finally saw myself in the mirror, I froze. "Mama, I didn't know your son was this handsome," I said to myself, a tear almost falling off my eyes. As we walked through the mansion together, the staff stopped what they were doing just to stare. Whispers followed us like shadows. William smirked. The meeting hall fell silent the moment we entered. Shareholders who looked bored moments ago straightened up. Some looked shocked, others impressed. William's presence filled the room effortlessly. Even without seeing them, he owned them. I slipped away briefly to grab water, my nerves buzzing. That's when Ben Parker appeared. "Well, isn't this the poor boy dressed like a prince?" he said smoothly, stepping too close. "Did my brother lend you a leash too?" I tried to move, but he blocked me. "You look stunning," Ben murmured, fingers brushing my arm. It's such a waste hiding behind him. Before I could react, he leaned in too close as if to whisper something in my ear. "You should come to my room tonight," he said with a smirk on his face, then he patted my cheeks. My heart slammed wildly until I heard something that sounded like a thud. Ben yelped, staggering back, hand flying to his head. William stood there, calm, his wooden cane still raised slightly. "Touch him again," William said coolly, "and you'll be leaving this meeting in an ambulance." The room had gone completely silent. Ben's face twisted in fury, but he said nothing. He couldn't, of course. Big Brother has come to save the day. Ben was clearly embarrassed, but he said nothing, and then he stormed away. I turned to William, my chest tight, pulse out of control. "Alex," he said softly. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, sir." I nodded, though my heart was still racing, for reasons I didn't fully understand. Do you love this story? Comment part 2 if you want to see the next part where things take a whole more dramatic turn and secrets unfold. Please like and subscribe to my channel to help support us to make more interesting BL stories for you. Thanks for watching till the end. See you soon.